Today, we take a first look at an ancient-style clay pot and see what we can come up with. Right now, on 999 Things to Cook. Please, please, please hit that like button as we start with a clay pot. It's pretty cool looking, right? It can be used in the oven, open fire, grill, stovetop, even a microwave. I've been interested to try to test this thing out. So I've got some beef short ribs this time. I'm just gonna add them straight away to the pot. No searing or anything. You'll see where I'm going with this in the end. I also have some marrow bones. These have been soaking in water for about an hour. You really should let them soak overnight to get all the blood out, but I don't have the time for that right now. I'll live. Make sure to discard that yummy looking blood water. I've got an onion. I'm only gonna add half the onion to the pot. It's just to add some flavor to the meat. I suggest cutting it into large segments for this. I'll save the other half to slice it up at the end. We then add beef stock. Make sure it's unsalted stock so that you can control the salt levels yourself. Now I know most people don't have a clay pot like this, but using a regular roasting pan will work just fine. Add enough stock to cover almost everything. To flavor it, I start by adding a few big pinches of kosher salt. About this much whole black peppercorns. A couple bay leaves. Some garlic powder. A good amount of it too. A very precise amount of dried thyme. A bit of white pepper. A nice sized guajillo chili. It'll fit, just jam it in there somehow. And a few Thai chilies. Add the lid. This lid is not tight-fitting, which isn't a big issue if it's on a fire pit, but it will be for an oven. Off it goes to a 350-degree oven for 3 hours, assuming the lid is tight-fitting. Yeah, I put a tray underneath just in case. 5 hours later, and we have success. Yes, you can see I had to make a tight seal using foil. I noticed that after about 2.5 hours, it was not cooking properly without it being sealed tightly. But like I said earlier, if the lid was tight, it would only take about 3 hours. At this point, the meat is fall-apart tender. Remove all the meat and the marrow bones from the pot. Most of the marrow has melted into the stock, and that's a good thing since we need a sauce. I do have use for the other marrow bones at the end though. At this point, you can go ahead and remove the bones. Yes, it should be this tender. Now we make the sauce. We don't need a whole lot of sauce though, really. Ladle some of the stock through a strainer into a pan and bring it to a simmer. While the flavors are reducing and concentrating in the pan, I got to work shredding the meat. Just a couple forks and pull it apart like pulled pork. I wanted to take a second and point out that when you make a sauce out of stock like this, you really want to separate the fats from the juices in it. And there are various ways to do that, including refrigerating it and then skimming off the solidified fats. But do I look like I have the patience for all that right now? Just make sure it's at a high simmer and then drizzle in a slurry of cornstarch and cold water to tighten it up. You won't need much. For this kind of thing, I usually like to add a dash of kitchen bouquet at the end. It gives it a deep flavor, but don't overdo it. Taste it for seasoning. A bit more salt and pepper. Then add in the meat. Incorporate it well into the sauce and make sure that the heat is at its lowest setting for this. Always keep tasting as you go because evidently it still needed a lot more black pepper. After about 10 minutes in the sauce, remove it from the heat. I like to use a colander to store it because it allows the excess sauce to drip away. We actually don't want it too wet for this. Oh, and by the way, in another pan with some butter, toast off 2 slices of bread nicely on both sides. Here we go with the bread. Mayo, of course. Homemade is best, but oh well. Black pepper on the mayo. Now the other slice of bread. Retrieve those marrow bones. This is where the flavor starts to go off the charts. Slather it on. The more the better. If you are squeamish about bone marrow, then I am sorry for your taste buds. Then add your beef. Pile it high. Then some thin sliced white onion. And I mean paper thin, like slivers. And top it all off with shredded cheddar cheese. Oh yeah, man. You can just pop this in the oven to melt it like a normal person would, but since it's been almost 6 hours to make this sandwich, my patience is running out. So I'll do it the faster way. Add the bone marrow crusty, buttery, toasty lid on top. This really is a work of art here. It's quite simple to do, even though it takes a while, but it's more than worth the effort, I promise. I'm not even gonna try to explain what this tastes like. I don't use the word perfect very often, but I will say with 100% honesty that this is a perfect sandwich. Every single element of it came together in just the right way, and it's unbelievably incredible. I promise you will love it if you ever try to make this. But you know, I do have a lot of meat and cheese left over. So I asked myself, what if I took these ingredients and hijacked a pizza shop? Well, let's find out, shall we? Tip the servers, so why not tip the cook? You tip the delivery driver, so how about tip this cook? You tip the cute bartender, but you forgot to tip the cook. You tip the Uber driver, so how about tipping this cook? You tip the damn valet parker, but you forgot to tip this cook. You even tip that barber. So why not tip